Where is he?
What do you think, Tina? Should I cut the cake?
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry.
I gotta give it.
Cut the cake? She's asking you. Need to come in?
But you have our email.
Am I in the way? Am I in the way?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. This is Cerulean Arts Gallery, and we have this is Jill Rupinski's third show with us. So we're very excited for it. And today she's going to talk about this body of work, and we'll field questions from you. So let's give Jill a warm welcome.
I was asked to cut the cake.
You want to do the cake now or later?
What do you think? Later. Later? All right, we'll talk. Then you get a cake.
We can dessert.
Dessert. Okay. Thanks for coming, everybody, and it's nice to see my worlds collide. You know, it's a good thing, because there's people from church, there's people from school, my students, my former students, friends, friends from New Jersey, Pennsylvania. It's a wonderful thing. Did I miss anybody? Yeah. And I want to talk about the genesis of this exhibition. My last show, I concentrated on the 4 elements in landscape, which was earth, wind, fire, and water. And ever since I've been a child, painting, I've painted landscape. And I started painting with oil painting at 10 years old. And like anybody who does art, you almost can't remember when you first started to do art, when you first picked up a crayon or a pencil. Mostly those big fat crayons they had in the kindergarten. And turning to art was a release for me, because I didn't feel like I fit in with other kids. I don't know if other folks feel that way. And I was always out on the landscape. I was a serious artist doing oil painting, as I said, when I was 10. My mother taught me how to paint, although she wasn't a painter. She went to Moore College of Art for dress design and tailoring, but she guided me toward art because she knew that that was an important thing in my life. But anyway, I won't bore you with all that. So I would say that anybody who's followed my work has followed and seen my work as landscape. And I've worked on portraiture. The first experience that I had with serious portraiture was when one of my former instructors came to me, and his name was Arthur DaCosta. Some of you know of him or knew him. And he came to me and he put his hand on my shoulder, which was an important thing with Arthur, because when you got the hand on the shoulder, you knew that you were doing something right. It wasn't a bad thing. It was always like a good thing. So he put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Jill, a man needs a portrait copy. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, the University of Pennsylvania owns a portrait of the first surgeon in the United States." And I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, the surgeon that is. But the hospital, it was the oldest hospital, Pennsylvania Hospital. Thank you, Hal. My resident surgeon here. You might know the originals. What's the first?
I am the original.
So Pennsylvania Hospital wanted this painting, but the University of Pennsylvania owned it. So Arthur said, "I want you to do this portrait." I said, "Me? I've been doing landscapes." And I hadn't had a critique from Arthur in 3 years. because I had kind of drifted away from him. You know, you find other mentors and other artists who, you know, click with. So I said, all of a sudden it was like, may the force be with you, you know? It's like that hand on my arm, my shoulder. So I have to credit Arthur with starting me on portraiture. So I've done lots of portraits, and portrait paintings, portrait commissions, and drawings. I love sitting with people and just studying their faces. Every single face is just an intriguing journey for me, just to look at the face. So when this show came about, I thought, well, I'm going to do landscaping. You know, that's my way to go. And then I went out and bought all the material, spent a lot of money, a small fortune, for canvas and stretcher bars. And I got in my studio and said, the ideas are there, but the will wasn't behind it. You know, it wasn't coming together. And I said, I don't know what moment happened to make this come together, but I said, I want to go back to drawing portraits. But I want to include landscape. So I want to have every person, every portrait involved with landscape. And of course I started to think about landscape. And I thought about my last show. I thought about the elements, because I really loved that idea. There's so much there to work with. And I thought about the elements. I said, the one area in landscape that I haven't explored enough of, and I want to do that, is water. And I thought, look at all the variations on water. And I think about the natural water, ocean, lake, stream, river, pond. So anything in the natural. Then I said, oh my gosh, what about controlled situations in water? So I got a notebook. By that I started to list all of the ways that water is involved with our lives, and then all of the ways that we have controlled water. Think about it. Irrigation, right? Now, moving water for drinking water. I mean, we're controlling that. Putting a koi pond together, you could say that's controlled. I don't think there's, well, there I guess there are natural, but thinking of the person who really builds a pond and controls that. So the list got really long, and I only had a few months to do this because I had a wonderful portrait commission over the summer, which whisked me into that area, which was really a wonderful thing. And I thought I got kind of condensed with my time. And I work really well under pressure. I don't know about you folks. If I have more time, I'll take more time. So I'll do something, I'll do that, I'll do something else. So I really had that time from the end of August to now, or well, when did the show open? A week ago? I had to have it delivered by the 3rd of January to condense this. So I said, you know, I'm going to start to think about natural bodies of water. I started to think about all of the people in my life without really going too far out, just on the top of my head, all the people who had something to do with water, indirectly or directly. So I listed people like, and I thought sailors. So I have a sailor and a sailboat. Then I have a seaman on the ocean. Well, these are two people who I know. And some of you know both of these people. Then I thought, well, what about other bodies of water and what I'm connected with? And then I started to think about the Morris River down in New Jersey and Pat Witt. And the stories that Pat told me about the diked farms along the Morris River, which are, there's only one left. Do you know what a diked farm is? So along the Morris River, the farmers, I don't know how far back this goes, Pat can tell you, Pat's in the corner there, Pat's here. The farmers would dike the river so they would have more arable land. So it was a way to get more land, and gosh, the riverbed became the field, right? The tillable soil. Became very fertile land. So I thought about the ladies here who lived on the last diked farm in New Jersey, Bircham Farm. The ladies are dead. They're gone now. I met the one, who did I meet, Pat? Which one did I meet?
Jeanette.
I met Jeanette. You can't tell me which one it is, right? Maybe you can. Because they were twins. They were twin sisters. Okay? And Pat grew up with them, and she's known as the marsh painter. She also grew up on a diked farm. Her father's farm, grandfather's farm? Grandfather's farm. The sailor is Rob Resch, my colleague and a professor that some of you know. The seaman is Brian Boutwell, who left his career as a seaman after I don't know if he said 12 or 15 years, and started a new career. But those are some of the little snippets of stories. The first drawing was this one. And first thing, after I started to think, well, okay, I'm going to work with portraits, I'm going to work with people I know, I'm going to work with natural bodies of water. What am I going to do with that? So I said, I'm going to draw, because that's the most natural thing. And I don't want this to be easy. I don't want the prettiest drawings. I don't want the paper to be giving. I want it to fight me. I want it to be like water that has its own will, and that I have to really work with that water to bring it to me. And at times, that was actually true. So, a size was a problem. Philadelphia is very, hi folks, welcome. And there's Veronica, my lovely first model. So, paper, it's hard to get good paper in Philadelphia. Where do you get good paper? Where's the greatest central art in New York? Okay, if you want good paper, go there. So you're stuck with what? Arches, EFK reeds, you're stuck with Stonehenge, things like that. And size was an issue for me. I wanted it bigger, but I didn't want it oversized. I didn't want those massive sizes because there's a framing issue, right? So I trolled around the art stores and I found this paper at Artists and Craftsmen. It's called Khadi paper, Khadi. Khadi in India, right? Cloth, right? Jan's in India, right? You know about India. So it's 100% rag, handmade paper. And when I looked at it, I said, I love the size, and I love the thickness. It's I want to say it's like 300, 400 pounds. I don't know. It stands up and walks by itself. That's really great. I can stand it up in my studio, finish each drawing. I don't have to worry about boards. I don't have any walls. So that's why. And then I love the wave. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have that open. Water doesn't, you want that openness, you want that endless quality, you want that movement, the waves. So I settled on that paper. And if you're an artist, and most of you are here that I see, when you get that thing on the easel, all of a sudden, I get a visual imprint. When I really get the canvas, the paper, the support ready, and I feel it, whether I prepared it myself, I get that sensation of the tactile sensation, the visual sensation comes together, and the ideas flow. So I was all set. So I said, okay, what am I going to do? Who's going to be first? It's Veronica. We've been working together a long time, right? But I never really spent time with Veronica on a one-to-one. really, right?
Never.
She's worked for me, she's modeled for me privately, but not for me, you know? And I love her. I mean, I consider her a friend as well as, you know, a person who works. Yeah, sisters. Yeah. We both have plaid jackets. We're sisters. When we show up together, we're usually dressed well.
You were absolutely.
Where's your red?
I know. I was going to wear red. I can't.
Can I tell? Do you mind if I tell the story about what we talked about?
Yeah,
You're kind of an open book, right?
No, it's not, but it became an open book.
I'll be careful.
No,
I'll be
I'm
careful.
talking about just how it was for me. It was so personal, I didn't even know until you showed me.
Okay, good.
You know, that kind of thing.
I'll tell you the genesis of this. So Veronica has been modeling at the Academy for a long time. And every once in a while she'd come to my class because she's scheduled. And I said, oh no, it's Veronica, who I love as a person. But I felt like Veronica was the most challenging model I've ever had to deal with. And I would struggle with Veronica. And I got her, I asked the unforgivable question. You can slap me, Veronica. I stood there, I said, what are you?
Oh, I know. I used to get that as a kid.
Who are you? And she said, well, I'm African American, I'm Italian,
Irish.
I'm Lenny Lenape, and I'm Chickahominy. I said, that's it, I can draw you now. I know who you are. I mean, I'm serious because I really had a hard time with her face. So it was very generous of Veronica to let me talk to her about that and reveal that. So I get on, and she said to me, I really identify with my Native American side, you know, that
came
that
out.
part of my culture. And I started to research the Lenape. They came from, their range was from Delaware Water Gap all the way down through the Delaware Bay to Wilmington and good part of Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, gee, Veronica's from Jersey, New Jersey. Oh, that's weird, isn't it? But there's a place where there's a place where Pennsylvania and New Jersey come together, and that's at the Delaware Water Gap. Very close, right? Or Camden. That's okay. You can take the ferry, right? Duck boat. No, you can't take the duck boat anymore. No, don't do that. Don't. Not across the road. Okay. So I said, well, I'm going to do some research on the Delaware Water Gap. This is like a snippet of how I did my drawings. I'd talk to people. I would bring them to the studio. I would draw. I'd talk. I'd say talk while I'm drawing because I want to get some sense of who you are, not have just a 3-hour frozen face. And going back to the computer, research, and I thought, well, I found this little bit of information about Chief Tammany. Now it's Tammany. Remember Tammany Hall? Those of you my age who went. I didn't like that reference because it was a scandalous reference, right? Because Chief Tammany was a very important figure. William Penn signed treaties with him. William Penn was an honorable man. So he signed all these treaties with Tammany, bought the land, and held those treaties. Chief Tammany, I called him, because when you look on the internet, when you do research, forget internet, research, Tammany is spelled like 3 ways, and it's Tammany. I chose to use Tammany. He made a wampum belt and gave it to William Penn. It's in the Pennsylvania Historical Society. And he, I'm sorry, that's my train of thought. William Penn held those treaties, as I said. His sons broke the treaties. So after that, it was all downhill. Tammany was a very revered figure in American history, and the name was used in many societies. And when you research the Lenape, they're peace-loving people. They were not the warlike natives. They were peaceful. And I thought, Veronica embodies that for me. She's a loving, she's a peaceful person. I said, I want this to be I don't want this to be pretty. I want it to be really kind of gritty. And for, I don't know, some reason I needed to have this filled. So I was looking also at some kind of two sides to this. I didn't quite have it all together yet. I thought I want a dark side and a light side. And for me, in the end, when I did the research, I found that there's a Silver Spray Falls in New Jersey. It's very hard to get to. So if you go traveling up there, be careful, they say. And so I wanted the waterfall to come into her hand, from the New Jersey side, that is. But the metaphor is that it's the broken promise, it's the tears. So all of the water to me is like what happened after the promise was broken. So that's my story with this. And each one of these became like that little journey for me. Finding out who the person was and digging deeper into their past, in a sense. You know, who they really are, besides just their portrait or their face. For the materials, I worked with the sanguine, I worked with black, I worked with umber. And in the beginning, I was really trying to be a purist and just work with sanguine, but I just couldn't hold back. Because every time I moved along, I went from this one to that one. I think I worked these in tandem and then these in tandem. And by the time I got to Pat Witt, I needed, because of the nature of the subject and what I was doing with this, I felt like I needed more color. So that's when I added the yellow ochre. For those who are artists here understanding what I'm trying to do here, it became much easier aesthetically to separate the forms when I added the color. I used a lot of erasing, and I knew, like right from the beginning when I got this paper, this was going to be about putting it down and taking it back, and pushing it and letting the paper pull me back. And it turned out that this paper can be erased. It pills. You can tear it. You can pull those, pills, like a sweater pills, and you can pull those things off. You can rub, and you can get these very flat areas, and then you can draw with the chalk. It's probably more clearly seen here, where you can rub it in, and then you can put it down with the side of the chalk and leave it rather rough. The paper allowed me to wet. Those of you who take a workshop with me, I like to use water with a watercolor brush and wet dry media, chalk and pastel. So you can see all this area was done with a wet brush, and then I was able actually to erase. So it became both erased and brushed and blended with my hand, pulled out with the eraser and scrubbed back in with just the chalk. So it's very versatile. It's a very versatile paper and allowed me to do many, many things with the materials. Pat, if you've been to Pat's house, you know what it's like, or a studio. It's the quintessential artist's environment. Would you say? Yeah. Those are art. She lives in many generations of material, many things there have been there for decades, right? You probably have things that are family objects that are 100 or so years old, right? Then there's the studio, and it's cluttered with all the still life material, the benches. I'm talking about the barn studio school in Millville, New Jersey, not to be confused with the Barnes Foundation. But you know what? They rival the Barnes. Anybody who went to school Anybody who went to school at the academy that I knew, who came from South Jersey, met Pat Witt. And I heard about Pat Witt when I was a student. That's 40 years ago. But I only met Pat, I think Lou took me there. But I really only got to know you in the last 3 years, probably. Well, how long have I been working there? I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. And so the drawing, I always said the drawings will draw themselves. In a sense, if you let yourself go with it, they will develop on their own. And this became, I had to force myself to stop. That's how it was getting cluttered, in a good way. And I kept going with it and going with it. I wanted more and more and more. And I thought to myself, this is my feeling, my sense about the individual. And that happened with Rob's painting, it happened with every single one of these. I got a sense of who that person was, and that came through in the art. And Pat is known as the marsh painter. I had mentioned that, right? So I thought, well, I obviously use photo reference. I use a lot of photo reference, a lot of drawing from both. Pat sat for me and worked on the animation through some of the things I had done with you in the studio and some of the things I'd done from photographs. And it turns out that the photograph that was the best, the most significant, was the one that Father George wanted you to pose. He wanted you to pose with him. And you turned your head, and I said, that was it. And you turned your head over your shoulder. I said, oh. It was just a beautiful portrait of you. But I also had a picture of you like that. I thought, oh, I have to combine that. So in my drawings, you'll notice that I have sometimes a face with another face. Happens here. It happens in this one. There's two. It's a double image. So in my storytelling, it becomes present and past. This one too. Look at this one. There's a present and past there. It's okay. We'll get to that. So I implied Pat as she is, and who she is, and where she was. And where that came from was our third visit. Pat was tough. Another tough one. Got to the studio and I said, what am I going to do with this? I know who she is. I know that she's the marsh painter, but what am I going to do with that? I can't paint Pat painting a Pat Witt, right? But I want Pat to be known as an artist. I went to your niece's house.
Where are you, Terry?
Where? There she is, Terry. Went to Terry's house. Terry was the breaker for me. Third visit to Pat, I saw Terry, visited the farm, the old farm, and on the sideboard she had a photograph of the family and railbird boats. You know what railbirds are? These are these little birds in the marsh, and people would go hunt them. And Thomas Aikens, there's a beautiful portrait, a painting of by Thomas Aikens of railbird boaters. Correct? Did I say that right? Now, am I wrong? Did Thomas Aikens tell me, Pat, about Thomas Aikens?
Yes,
He went to your,
not mine.
no, but he went down there.
I make up stories and say, yes, I
But he
do.
went down there to hunt
Along the Dell River.
along, yeah,
Fortescue.
yeah, Fortescue. He went to Fortescue, and that's very kind of parallel to, you know, bringing my worlds together again, the Thomas Aikens world with the South Jersey world. And Pat said to me on that third visit, she said, you know, again, I had nothing really solid yet. And I said, I saw Terry, I saw the photographs, you know, we talked about the photographs, the railbirds. And I don't know what made you say this to me, but you said, when I was a little girl, I would go up in the silo, because she grew up on a farm, and I would look out the window at the log barges. You know, there's not one photograph of a log barge on the Morris River that I could find. My only regret, I have to say for this body of work, I'm going to interject this right now, is that I didn't have enough time to do more research because I didn't realize how much more research I needed to do. I would have had to go to a historical society to dig that out. So when Pat was a little girl, she would sit in the silo. Now, what's a silo window look like? If you look online for silo windows, there are many variations. So artistically, I had to come up with an image that made you recognize window. So I settled on the, the 2/2 window, because everybody knows that as a window. And they actually exist like that. I don't know, I didn't ask you. I didn't have time to ask you what your window looked like.
Make it up. Just make it up.
Okay. I hope you didn't make that up. So I have her pointing out the window to the log barge right there. And I took that photograph and I said, well, I can't paint Pat painting a Pat with. That's like dumb, because everybody knows what your paintings look like. So I took your photograph and blew it up into this size on the easel. So I indicated your family, right, drew your family and the connection. This is where the drawing told me what to do. I could no way, no how, put this together. This man is in the photograph, but he wanted to stay vertical, and the shadow wanted to connect to Pat. You know what I'm saying? Those of you who are artists, like it drives you in a certain direction, and you have to give up to it and take that opportunity. So then the title came, because as soon as this figure emerged as separate from the rest of the figures, by the way, one figure's missing, and you'll know why, Terry. So, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was the butt shot. That's not going to work in my drawing. So, I said Marsh inheritance. So, the connection between your past and what you want now. Now, Pat told me a story about Candace sat with her. Candace Fields. She's not here. And there she is! She's here. So what did you tell Pat about turkey feathers?
Pat, she'll call me a bunch of times, something will pop into her mind, and I had to look into turkey feathers and their meaning with Native Americans, and she was going to give the speech, just bringing that they were like a plentiful, like a rebirth kind of a meaning, re-giving to your family.
And you said to Pat, because you're a teacher, it's like that's your symbol.
Oh yeah, because she was concerned.
Because Pat has taught. When did you found the school?